If someone tells you Miami is on upset alert this week, tell them they are very wrong.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. I don't buy an upset alert for Miami whatsoever. I do buy one for Notre Dame, even though there's something that confuses me. Nebraska's on upset alert. This is going to be a jam-packed show, and it's brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. Alex Dono, Locked On Canes, is here. The gap, Dono, I think, continues to widen between the best in the ACC and the rest. We will learn just how close to Miami Georgia Tech actually is, because they are 100% on upset alert. They are on, they're actually a point spread underdog by 1.5 points at Duke this week. The Blue Devils have been playing well, but let's talk about this game. I could talk myself into, in an alternate universe, I suppose, Miami being on upset alert. I've got an experienced quarterback and a coach I like on the Louisville side of things. It's a Friday night game. Weird things happen when you don't play on Saturday. But I have watched Louisville this year. I have watched Miami this year. I think the Hurricanes are going to remind everybody else this week that they are a national championship contender.
Miami has advantages in this game in most areas of the field, and obviously games are not played on paper. They're played under the lights on a Friday night in this case. But the biggest advantage Spencer Miami has in this game, which I think could be very decisive, is Louisville's offensive line has been downright bad this year.
Yeah.
And when you're going up against Miami's defensive line, which is by almost any metric either best or second best behind Texas Tech, depending on which statistics you follow, with the season Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor are having for Miami's pass rush. Not being able to protect your quarterback, Miller Moss, has already at times been costly for Louisville. I know they're 4-1, but there are certain plays, even in games that they've won, where the protection has cost them interceptions, pick sixes, sacks, poor decisions. Miami has a huge advantage from that standpoint. I think part of the reason why Louisville's running game hasn't exploded the way people thought it would has been because of that offensive line. There's also the issue that Isaac Brown and Duke Watson, their star running backs at Louisville, have been banged up at times this year. They're probably going to be healthier than they've been recently coming off a bye week. But still, I think the Louisville offensive line is very problematic, and that's probably going to be, and there are other matchups, but that's probably going to be the one that is going to do Louisville in, and why Miami will probably avoid that upset bug.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is Louisville's had some turnover problems this year. Miller Moss has thrown 4 interceptions, only 7 touchdowns so far. He's had moments, but they have been inconsistent. The O-line, I think, has been a significant part of that. And look, they had a chance to beat Virginia last time out, couldn't quite get it done in what was a really close, exciting football game. But the game that has stuck in my head with Louisville, and I haven't just watched them one time this year, and I want to be fair to the Cardinals fans out there, maybe I'm overreacting to this spot, but the James Madison game is the one that makes me go, oh my gosh, Miami could beat them by 25 or 30 points. Because that was a game where at home, JMU was pushing Louisville around. And I think there are games in the ACC. I still think the Cardinals could look up at the end of the year and have a 7-9 win season. I still expect them to have that, as a matter of fact. I just don't see the, dark horse ACC championship contender team that is in there. They feel like they need to upgrade in the trenches, going both ways, but particularly, as you mentioned, along the offensive line. Miami, according to our friends at FanDuel, is favored by about 2 touchdowns in this game, Dono. I am tempted. I feel about as confident in them to cover that number as I was in Ohio State to cover it against Illinois, and they were on the road last week, and it's the same reason. I just think that one roster physically is way ahead of the other, and that just leaves your margin for error for the Cardinals to be really, really small.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where Louisville outright wins the game. Miami probably does cover that 13.5 point spread on FanDuel, but The only reason why I'll say, hey, maybe the spread can be covered is because I know one of the areas that Miami is really trying to sharpen and perfect is just the way they finish games, really stepping on the throat and playing well for 4 quarters. I mean, their win against Florida State a couple weeks ago, which wasn't really close, but at the end of the day, it was a 6-point margin of victory because Miami took their foot off the gas and really allowed Florida State to score a lot of points in, kind of garbage time in the fourth quarter. Miami probably should have or could have pulled away from Notre Dame week 1, and they didn't. And all this to say, again, these are good, talented football teams. So blowing teams out is not easy. But Miami has played with their food a little bit at times this year, and so that could be a factor when you talk about covering the spread. One of the bigger challenges for Miami, I've talked about it on Locked On Canes this week, and I think Miami's going to be up to this challenge, is an area where Louisville has had a lot of success this year is with their defensive line, specifically pass rusher Clev Lubin, who's got 4 sacks and a forced fumble already this year. Now, Miami's got one of the better offensive lines in the country, so you'd think that they're probably equipped. I don't know if you shut Lubin down completely, but they seem to be pretty equipped to deal with him. And Carson Beck has actually had one of the quickest releases in the country when it comes to his processing speed and getting the football out quickly. But I do think, Miami's offensive line versus Louisville's defensive line could be a really good, fun battle. But Miami's defensive line versus Louisville's offensive line might look like more of a massacre than a battle.
Louisville's defense statistically this year has been good. They're giving up less than 300 yards per game. This Miami offense, though, I've been impressed, Dono. I'm with you that the run game, I feel like, has another gear. Reminds me a bit of Ohio State's offense in general. It's been good, obviously. Team's undefeated. They've played well, but I feel like there's another level that they can take. But it's not overstating things to say that by far and away, the best part of the Miami offense is the passing game and how exciting it has been in the highlight plays that have been generated. And I think that was one of our questions for the Hurricanes coming into the season was, hey, you lost Xavier Restrepo and Elijah Arroyo. Like, those are some dudes. And now you look up and go, is Miami better with the weapons they have on offense? I think it's a fair question.
Yeah, I'll say this. Malachi Toney, who's been Miami's top receiver so far, is a true freshman. He's been remarkably good. And C.J. Daniels, who's a 6-year transfer from LSU. Toney and Daniels, to me, have been better than any 2 receivers on Miami's roster last year. And that includes Xavier Restrepo and all he did for Miami. I think Miami's got 2 that are better than anyone they had last year. We're kind of trying to find out, and I think this question will be answered throughout the season. You haven't really had like a third guy step up consistently this year. It's kind of been different depending on the game. Another true freshman, Josh Moore, had like a breakout game against USF. Has been pretty quiet outside of that game. Miami's tight ends have been somewhat quiet as receivers. Elijah Lofton and Alex Bowman have made a few catches here and there, but they're yet to make like a huge impact. So it's been a little bit more maybe top heavy than it was last year, but I think Miami's passing game has worked for them, and Carson Beck has been fantastic. He's really does a good job kind of taking what the defense gives to him or hitting big plays, because he hit a number of big plays against Florida State. So having someone with his experience level and just his maturity and his football IQ has been huge, and it's really made Miami a lot better. And the running game's been able to function well because that if you try to take Miami's running game away, the passing game can also hurt you.
I'll go Canes 30-13. I think they are just fine in this spot.
Yeah, my pick, I'm going somewhere in the neighborhood of 31-17. I think is where I'm at on this one in favor of Miami. And so, again, I think it's going to come down to how close the game is. I think it's going to come down to who makes more mistakes. Miami's also got to be mindful with their special teams coverage, because Colin Lacey for Louisville has returned 2 punts for touchdowns already this year. So Miami's got to be sharp when it comes to their kicking and their punting game as well. But, you definitely – and Friday night games are crazy, usually more difficult for the road team than the home team, given the short week and the night game and travel and all that. So, yeah, I've got – my official pick is Miami covering the spread by a little bit. I'll go 31-17.
Alex Dono, Locked On Canes, great as always. A big matchup in the non-conference slate. It's USC Notre Dame. I hope this game goes on forever. I don't want us to look back and say this is one of the last ones we saw. I know how I feel about this game, but I don't know how I feel about something going into this game. First, this episode brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. The real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Do you have a game-changing player on your team? Well, there's a game-changing aspect to using Supply House. If you need parts fast, Supply House has next-day delivery. That is a game changer. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. This episode brought to you by our friends also at FanDuel. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, you put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And maybe your first bet should be fading any one of my picks because it hasn't been good so far. I am determined to get it right. I've got half the regular season left and conference championship weekend to get myself at least back to 500 on the year. That's my goal. That's my goal, and it starts this week. But if you don't think that's going to happen, that I've got absolutely no chance, then FanDuel is the place to go to just fade my picks every week. I can't even argue against you at this point because I'm 6 games under 500. That can change. That can all change in just 1 week. If you think you know better than me, which you might, check out how you can do at FanDuel.com. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Check them out at FanDuel.com. I have liked USC all year. I liked the way they played last week. Thought they'd beat Michigan. They did. Now they go on the road to Notre Dame, and they're almost a double-digit underdog. I understand nothing. Tyler Wojciak of Locked On Irish is here. I understand Tyler, USC being the underdog in this spot. Notre Dame is a good team. They are 1 play in 2 games, or 2 plays if you add it all up, cumulatively, from being a 1-loss team that no one would object to having ranked just outside or maybe even inside the top 10 right now. Instead, they're a 2-loss team, and I get it. That's a big number, 9.5 points. Am I crazy?
It is a big number. I did not expect it to get this high, and it actually reminds me of the last time that USC played at Notre Dame Stadium. If you remember, Notre Dame fell to Ohio State in a heartbreaker, 10 men on the field, famous play. Then the following week, they have to have this dramatic comeback to beat Duke back when Mike Elko and Riley Leonard were still there. And then they got just smacked around by Louisville. And the season was over because by that point, they had 2 losses. We were still in the 4-team playoff era. So they had nothing going for them. Then they had a bye week, and the vibes around the team were just really bad. And they were facing USC, who was undefeated at the time. They had Caleb Williams, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. And Notre Dame was favored in that game by like 7 points. I was like, what the hell is this? Everyone was like, how is Notre Dame favored in this game? They have 2 losses. USC is undefeated. They've looked great with Caleb Williams. And then Notre Dame just dominated them. So personally, I'm hoping for a repeat of that same game. But I'm with you. I don't understand how it's 9.5.
Yeah, and the biggest reason that I'm confused at that line, and anytime I see something like that, whether it's, which team is favored, or the line is that small, or the line is that big, but especially in this spot where it's, that many points, it makes me go, what does Vegas know? What are they trying to tell me? What are they getting? I don't know. The reason I am particularly confused, Tyler, is though it has rebounded in the last couple of weeks, Notre Dame's defense this year has not been nearly as good as it was a season ago. And this USC offense looks like the Trojans offense that USC fans were promised when Lincoln Riley showed up. And we've seen for large stretches of his tenure, last year was a little inconsistent, but Jaden Mayva has played very well. And this year, the biggest revelation is that USC can run the ball. And I think if you can run it on Michigan, you can run it on Notre Dame. And when this offense with Mekhi Lemon and the weapons, maybe Jacoby Lane gets back this week, if they are able to be balanced, I just don't know how Notre Dame is going to outscore them by 10 or more points.
Well, it does help Notre Dame that USC is going to be without their top 2 running backs in this game. But then they had the freshman King Miller, who didn't even play at all against Illinois, come in because they needed a body out there. And they actually got fined because they played another player who's considered out on the injury report, but they just needed guys. They were in such a desperate situation. But anyway, King Miller comes out there. He's from nearby in Calabasas, and I believe he was a walk-on, and he ran for 158 yards on 18 carries against Michigan. Now, I think that the Wolverines were so unprepared for him in the way that USC used him that they just had no answers. The difference for Notre Dame is they know he's going to be getting the ball. They have a week to prepare for him. So the surprise factor has kind of gone away. But I'm with you. When Lincoln Riley is at his best, when his offenses are really clicking, you go back to his Oklahoma days, it's because they can run the ball well. Like, even though he's an air raid disciple, his offense is at its best when they can run the ball consistently. And so far this year, they've been able to do that. But even though Notre Dame has struggled on defense for most of the year, or at least the beginning of the year in the most high-profile games, the one thing that they have done well, at one point it was the only thing that they did well, was stop the run. So if they can contain USC's run game and force Jaden Mayva to do everything, yeah, he's going to get some yards. Yeah, he's going to get some points. But I do think he's going to make some mistakes, and that is ultimately going to be the difference.
This is a great quarterback matchup. Jaden Mayva, CJ Carr has been fantastic. You and I talked a lot on the show about that quarterback battle all offseason, and CJ Carr won the job, and we have seen why CJ Carr won the job at this point. If Notre Dame had won either the Miami or Texas A&M game, as I thought they would. Very rude of them to make me look bad like that, but I'll forgive them for now. If they had done that, I think we would talk about CJ Carr and the Heisman conversation a heck of a lot more, because Notre Dame's playoff hopes would be more reasonable. Obviously, they have to win out, and even then, I don't think it is a guarantee. But how do you feel about CJ Carr and Jaden Mayva? Because I can really see a game, Tyler, that goes back and forth like 38-35, and both quarterbacks are just dialed as can be.
I'm with you. I'm actually looking up the Heisman odds on FanDuel right now, and CJ Carr and Jaden Mayva are tied at plus 2,500. Carson Beck is the favorite at plus 300 right now, but they're not that far off. And here's the thing with CJ Carr. For one, it's hilarious that this was even a competition. I don't know what was going on in fall camp. Maybe that's an off-season topic you and I can investigate. Like, how the hell was that ever close, considering how well CJ Carr has played all season long? But there is an underrated aspect of this game that I've been talking about all week on the show. I don't think it's been getting a ton of attention. So Jaden Mayva is in his 3rd season playing college football. He started at UNLV, played as a true freshman, and then took over halfway through the season as a sophomore, and then he started for USC all year. So he's played a lot of college football, right? CJ Carr has started 6 games, and yet CJ Carr has already played in 2 massive games, first 2 games of the season, first 2 games of his career. And I look at Jaden Mayva, and I'm going through the games that he has played. He has never played in a game with this much at stake in his 3 years of playing quarterback in college football. And I think that matters, especially considering Mayva is going to be on the road. So yeah, he has a lot more experience. He does not have the same amount of big game experience as CJ Carr does, which is crazy because Mayva has played way more than Carr has. And I do think that gives Carr an advantage in this game.
Was Mayva starting? Had they made the switch yet when these teams squared off in Los Angeles last year at the Coliseum?
Yeah, and he actually played well. I mean, they were moving the ball. Notre Dame had like a pretty comfortable lead throughout the game. It was usually 2 touchdowns, and then USC would cut it to a score. But Notre Dame kind of had it going. They were running all over him. They finished with like 258 rushing yards in that game. But then at the end of the game, USC had the ball. They're down a touchdown. They're going in to score, and then Mayva throws the first pick six. Then they get the ball back. They drive right down the field, and then he throws another pick six, and then Notre Dame goes up by 3 touchdowns late in the 4th quarter, and that was game. They ended up scoring another touchdown late in garbage time. But he played well, but one thing about Jaden Mayva, he's due for like 2 to 3 brutal mistakes a game, and it's on the defense to take advantage of him. Last year, Notre Dame was able to do that. In the Texas A&M game, they were not able to take advantage of Marcel Reed's mistakes, and that ended up being the difference in that game. So it's very important for the Notre Dame defense to jump on the opportunities when Jaden Mayva gives them, because he doesn't give a ton, but he's going to give you a couple, and you have to capitalize.
I think the team that wins the rushing battle wins this football game. Jeremiah Love on one side, USC's running back by committee, and whatever is going to happen with that on the other. But USC's run defense much improved. Michigan learned that last week. I know Justice Haynes got banged up, but typically I think that Michigan offense has been kind of plug and play. I think Haynes provides another level, but anyone has a certain floor of production, and I credit USC's defense for how they played running the ball. I think Notre Dame wins this game, Tyler. I am not putting this in my lock of the week. Best bet. Easy point. It terrifies me like no other. So I'll take Notre Dame to win. USC keeps it close, 35-31. I think this is like the Texas A&M game, but this time Notre Dame, battle tested in that sort of environment, gets it done.
I'm laughing because I had the exact same score prediction this week. So clearly you've been watching and listening, you've been copying me. But let me throw something at you, though, that could impact my own prediction because I said 35-31 all week on the show. Keep an eye on the weather. It might be a factor. It's going to be an unseasonably warm day for mid-October in South Bend. It's going to be like 72, but the chance of rain is going up and up right around game time. And maybe even more important than the rain is that it might be really windy. I'm talking like 30-mile-an-hour winds. And even though Notre Dame Stadium is like kind of in ground, the wind can be a factor. If it's just wet, that's one thing. I think guys can kind of get over that. But if it's windy and the ball starts slipping and sailing around, who knows what could happen? Maybe Notre Dame is able to run all over them. Maybe USC has some bad turnovers, or maybe it's the complete other way around. So something to monitor here. I haven't seen any significant shift in the line. If the under just plummets, then maybe Vegas has an inside track on the latest weather report. But it is something that I am watching closely, for one, because I'm going to be there and I need to know what to pack. But two, I think that this could really impact the game if it ends up raining a lot during game time. If it rains during the day, they'll have it dried up. It's turf. They'll be fine. But rain and wind, not a great recipe for high-powered offenses, so we're going to have to see how that plays out.
The wind. It's 72 degrees in South Bend in mid-October. What, you guys busting out the sandals over there? I mean,
Dude,
goodness.
When I was a student there, the sun would usually disappear in like early October, and then we'd see it again during finals week of spring semester, which was always the worst possible time. And we're like, what is that giant bulb of light in the sky? It's burning me. So yeah, 72 in middle of October. I saw that. I'm like, oh my God, that's going to be amazing. And then it's like, oh, it's just going to be soaking wet. That's not as fun.
Well, you know what? It'll be football weather one way or the other. And keep it, we gotta think. That's just all the more reason that I don't want to touch this game.
Yeah,
I'm just like, nope, stay away. Don't want it.
It's kind of screaming late backdoor cover where like
it is.
Notre Dame has a 7-point lead, and then maybe they just kick a field goal to ice it with a minute left, and then they end up covering in a game that was back and forth throughout, and then you walk away like, how did Notre Dame cover a nearly double-digit point spread? And then it just, it's the laws of gambling, man.
Nothing could be as brutal as Incarnate Word in East Texas A&M the other day.
Yeah, I saw that Bad Beat segment.
The Bad Beat with Scott Van Pelt. That was legendary.
Gas station.
Legendary. Are they playing next to a gas station over there? It's unbelievable. Scott Van Pelt, a national treasure. So is Tyler Wojciak, Locked on Irish. Great as always. Nebraska, please listen to me and listen to me now. You need to be so incredibly careful on Friday night. First, this episode brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, Mazda has got you covered. And Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, which is important this time of year. They've got more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. And any season that you would need to have confidence driving through is right around the corner. You feel that chill in the air, that little crispiness in the morning. Maybe you're seeing a little bit more precipitation. Some of you, depending on where you're located, might be seeing a little bit of snow already here in mid-October. If you want a car that is going to give you the confidence to go anywhere at any time and know that you will get there safely, Mazda is the one for you. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery as well. They've got it all. Like the players of your favorite team, they sweat every detail at Mazda, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Nebraska has a huge game this week. By the way, ignore the fact, because my top 25 would never do this insanity, that Nebraska is ranked behind Cincinnati, who they beat earlier this year. Don't know what we're doing. I do know that Nebraska goes to Minnesota on Friday night to play the Golden Gophers. I'll tell you right now, this will be one of my best bets of the week. Minnesota will keep this close. The Golden Gophers are not a great team. They're also not a terrible team. They're just right smack dab in the middle. Nebraska's trying to fight their way out of the middle. Here's the extra importance on this game, which I absolutely have flagged as an upset alert this week for the Cornhuskers. Last year, at this time, they had the exact same record. Their only loss was a home game that they kind of gave away to Illinois. That was their only loss. This year, their only loss is at home, and they got beat by Michigan. That's different. It's better. But after a 5-1 start last year, they went 1-5 down the stretch, scrapped and fought and clawed their way into a bowl game and broke the drought. So that was getting over a hurdle mentally as a program and for the fans. Here's another opportunity, because you go in the same spot with a more favorable schedule than you went into at this point in the season last year. Nebraska has to be able to take advantage. I don't think they're a college football playoff team. I think they're a good team. I think they're a program on the rise. But let me give you a couple of reasons why I have this flagged as an upset alert and why I like Minnesota to cover the 7.5 point spread. It's come down a little. I think Minnesota will be all right there. Reason number one, short week on the road. That's not a great combination. Reason number two, Matt Rule has been speculated by myself and many, many others for valid reasons to be a candidate for the next head coach at Penn State University. That doesn't always bode well. That can be a distraction. That can cause just a little bit of slippage out there. But you know what? Let's say Nebraska overcomes that. Let's say they get off to a good start in this game, which to me would be the number one indicator that outside noise hasn't distracted them, that they are focused on the opponent at hand, who's 2-1 in Big Ten play so far. Only Big Ten team so far that's beaten Minnesota is Ohio State. Now, they beat them very soundly, because the Golden Gophers are not on Ohio State's level, nor are most teams in America, frankly. So I don't know how much of a jab that is. You know, Washington's a team that a lot of people want to have ranked. And I think the reason they aren't is you look around and go, well, I don't know exactly what their best win is. I guess it's Rutgers and Maryland, or in some combination there. Like, okay, I think that's all right. Well, Minnesota's got a loss to Ohio State, and Washington's got a big loss to Ohio State. Are we holding that against them? Not in a major way. Now, here's the third reason. Nebraska's defense. And this was a question I had about the Cornhuskers coming into this year. I thought they'd be able to overcome it and be a 9-3 team. I think they're right on that trajectory. They're right on that trajectory at this point in the season, in a very good position, frankly, to have that exact record that I had them at before the year. But this is a really important game. And it's an important game for their defense because they need to be able to get right. You might look at Nebraska's defensive numbers this year and think, oh, look, their defense is still playing well, even though Tony White went to Florida State to be the defensive coordinator. They're okay on that side of the ball. Nope, they're not okay. Those numbers are being inflated by the games against Akron and Houston Christian. Now, they played well against Cincinnati back in week 1. That's a game that is holding up quite well over time, might I add. But since Big Ten play began, Nebraska has allowed 30 points at home to Michigan. They scored 13 on the road last week against USC. 27 points to Michigan State. They haven't won a Big Ten conference game yet. And 31 points to Maryland, who's slightly better than I thought, but as we kind of thought before the year, is coming back down to earth and is not a great team. They're okay. Those have been the outcomes so far. 2 of those games have been at home. 2 of those games have been on the road. 2 of these games will be on the road, I should say. Two of those games were in Lincoln. Michigan and Michigan State put up 27 and 30 points. That doesn't make me feel very good. When I watch Nebraska's defense, I don't love what I see. They look like a team that can get pushed around a little too often. Now, the good news is they have won some one-possession games this year, which is also, frankly, a big sigh of relief for Nebraska fans. But Dylan Raiola cannot turn the ball over and let the Golden Gophers faithful, who we know are passionate and many, many tens of thousands strong, cannot let them get going on a Friday night. This just has upset written all over it. So I think Nebraska goes in there and wins the game. And let me say one more thing about this matchup before I talk about Oklahoma and South Carolina really quick to end today's show. This is a Nebraska run defense that has not been exceptional. You look at what happened in the game that, admittedly, I thought they would win. Against Michigan, Wolverines ran all over them all day long. That was a 3-point game. That game was not that close. Michigan was just straight up the better team. A big reason was they ran the ball comfortably. Minnesota's a team that wants to do that. I think PJ Fleck and his staff are going to look at what Michigan did and say, how can we do that? How can we replicate what Michigan was able to do? Nebraska so far this year is giving up 151 rushing yards per game. That's too many. On average, they are getting outgained on the ground this year. That makes it really hard to win, puts a lot more pressure on Dylan Raiola. But the Minnesota rushing attack hasn't gotten going. Darius Taylor has been hurt, and Fame Ijiboy has been good, capable, but it's not what we thought it might be for the Golden Gophers coming into this season. They have not had a 100-yard rusher between those two since Darius Taylor's first game against Buffalo when he carried the ball 30 times for 141 yards. That's the only time Minnesota has had a 100-yard rusher. If they get one of those guys going in a significant way to the tune of hitting the century mark, then Minnesota could win this game outright. I think Nebraska has just enough, but just enough to go win this game. Tight one on the road, 23-20. I'll take Nebraska to win a one-possession game. How about that? Going to pick them to do that again. Does that feel great? Not necessarily. Here's who else doesn't feel great. Oklahoma. Oklahoma better win this week, or it is going to be a long season. Now, I actually don't believe, call me an SEC hater if you like, the back half of Oklahoma's schedule is as difficult as it gets made out to be. This is not to say that it is easy. It is immensely challenging. They will lose multiple games coming down the stretch. South Carolina has not been the team that they were capable of being coming into this year so far. You have to go to Columbia. Oklahoma are about to become road warriors if they're going to make the SEC championship or the college football playoff, neither of which I expect them to do, because 3 of their next 4 games are away from Norman. At South Carolina, host Ole Miss next week, then go at Tennessee, have a bye, and then play at Alabama before you play Missouri and LSU. I don't think LSU is as good as everybody else thinks. That's a very winnable game for Oklahoma. Missouri at home, not easy. I like Missouri, but at home, that's a winnable game. At Alabama, looks very difficult. Crimson Tide are playing well. At Tennessee, winnable, but hard. Definitely hard. Ole Miss just struggled at home with Washington State. Ole Miss, one of those teams that will just play up or down to the level of their competition. That should be a dogfight. South Carolina this week, hungry for a win. This was the time of year last season where Shane Beamer's team caught fire and won 6 straight and had people going, they should be in the college football playoff. And yeah, I hope we don't do that again this year. So Oklahoma can make that simple by winning the football game. But as I called out with Oklahoma earlier this year, they are just too John Mateer dependent on the ground. Why can they not run the football? Where is Jaden Ott or any of the other Oklahoma backs? That's been the knock on Ben Arbuckle during his career in whatever you want to call the limelight he's been in as an offensive coordinator, is he doesn't develop a run game. He hasn't at Oklahoma. There is no semblance of it whatsoever. So if John Mateer has a bad game, you're done. You're absolutely done. I don't love that. I really don't. I do think Oklahoma goes and gets a bounce back here because the South Carolina offense, I have not been impressed. I have not been impressed so far this year. This is not one of my best bets of the week. I do think Oklahoma is going to squeak out a win in a much needed kind of internal revenge bounce back spot. But boy, I can't see the offense just suddenly getting themselves going. Columbia should be on fire. I'll go Oklahoma 27-20, but the Sooners need a win this week or it is going to go downhill really, really fast there in Norman. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.